Welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Southern Sorceries, The Breakdown. We're doing a deck tech today on a very exciting deck. We're doing Storm from the X-Men. This is an exciting one. Storm is probably the most popular, I would guess, of the commanders, at least when they first revealed them. I know we're a little bit behind the curve as far as, getting in front of this and talking about it, but Storm, Force of Nature, she's awesome. There's been so many cool ideals behind her awesome ability. So yeah, let's just dive into it. First off, let's talk about the commander, Storm. Storm, Force of Nature, she is 1, a green, a blue, a red, legendary creature, mutant hero. She is a hero. She has flying and vigilance, and her ability that I was talking about, Ceaseless Tempest. Whenever Storm deals combat damage to a player, the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn has Storm. Go figure. Storm says when you cast it, copy it for each spell you cast before this turn. You may choose new targets for the copies. And her flavor text says, for me, there are no such things as limits. Unlimited Storm! It's great. I chose to make this deck Fringe CEDH. This is on the very powerful side. I couldn't make up my mind on what route I wanted to go. Did I want to abuse Storm's ability, or did I want to make routes that we could infinitely Storm off with a Storm count and then use cards that had Storm built in, or both? You can still abuse Storm with those infinite Storm counts. So I kind of split it down the middle. That's why I would not call it true CDH, even though there are some infinite lines here and very fast mana and expensive lands. But I don't know, it's all subjective to the table you play at, whether something, I guess, falls in line with your group CDH or not. I don't know if this is going to win any tournaments, so to speak. It's not meta, but it's nasty. I've play tested it several times, and we've gotten some quick infinite turn 2, turn 3s, so it's pretty cool. Again, when you play test stuff, though, you're not playing against real players, so it's all also subjective as to, is stuff going to get countered, is stuff going to get removed. I digress, but I just want to let's just dig into it. This is the breakdown. Thank you for watching. Here's a little message from our sponsor.
Today's video sponsor is Nerd Gear Gaming. With innovative original new products like the Playmat Sanctuary and the Commander Essentials Kit, Nerd Gear is for nerds by nerds. A newer company, they've had massively successful Kickstarter campaigns along with a #1 new release on Amazon. They've got lots of 5-star reviews, and the products speak for themselves, like life counters, dry erase tokens, spin downs, and various other products. Check out their website for some sweet deals, including an extra 5% off when you use our code SOUTHERN at checkout. And yes, that discount does stack with whatever other promotions they're running. You can also find them on Amazon with Prime shipping. Just search Nerd Gear or use the links in the description. So check out nerdgear.gg.
All right, thanks again for everybody for watching. Before we dive in any further, I do want to talk about something that's an action item that you guys can do to support us, and that's just like and subscribe. We have set off our New Year's goals for 2025. We're going to try to hit 5,000 subscribers. Man, how cool would that be? We just hit 3K. Super excited. Thank you all for that. What a crazy ride it's been. It's been less than 2 years of doing this so far, and we've had such a blast doing it. So we want to keep things moving and shaking. 5,000 is the goal. So if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing it. It's free, and you get to watch my crazy face do some stuff all the time, which is everybody's favorite, right? Let's just dive into the lands first. We're gonna go with our lands. Like I said, I did use some expensive lands. I do have most of the fetches that are relevant to our color scheme. I also put in dual lands and some other expensive lands. These are very easily audibled into different lands if you don't want to try to spend that type of money, because dual lands aren't cheap. But you could easily go with the Surveil lands that they just printed in Murders at Karlov Manor. You could just use basics, truthfully. And right now is a good time to buy fetches and some other of the shock lands. They're really kind of at all-time lows, considering they both had reprints recently. So let's just go through the lands. We're going to fly through these. We're going to run Ancient Tomb, Arid Mesa, Bloodstained Mire, and then our first land that does something else, Boseiju Who Endures. I love this land for any green deck. It has a channel ability, which is really nice. Channel says basically discard Boseiju Who Endures, discard it from your hand. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. That player may search the library for a land card with the basic land type and put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. Boseiju is just such a cool utility piece. All those lands from Neon Dynasty with that channel ability are just amazing, because basically it doesn't give you a late game land that is just going to be like card fodder. This now has an ability that you can keep, and it's a good ability. Boseiju is great. Odawara probably right behind it as far as utility, getting a lot of play. The others, maybe not so much as far as like just being overall like meta, like S tier, but they're good. They're all good. So had to add Boseiju. After that, we've got a breeding pool. We got some shocks. Cephalid Coliseum. I like to add this just because of threshold ability. I like the threshold abilities they did with the land cycle from MH3. Shifting Woodland's another good card, but its threshold ability, it says blue, tap it, sacrifice Cephalid Coliseum. Target player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards. Activate only if 7 or more cards are in your graveyard, which isn't terribly hard to do. This card is a fringe cut, possibly. This was one I ended up liking it just because the dig ability in a game that might go later than you would expect. And again, this is probably why it's not CDH, is because this deck is also built to kind of like weather the storm and go further than like turn 4, 5, 6, and kind of set up later. There are tutors and stuff. Again, I'll say all this with an asterisk because once you look at the deck list and once we go over everything, you might say, hey Shane, this is pretty much CDH. But again, that's why I wanted to add that land. Those threshold abilities are just so good. Following Cephalid Coliseum, we've got City of Brass, Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Flooded Strand, Forbidden Orchard, Gemstone Caverns, Mana Confluence, Misty Rainforest, Odawara, which Odawara, if we look at that one, Odawara says, the channel ability once again, this is 3 and a blue, discard Odawara Sorting City, return target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. It's a form of control, essentially, that you can bounce someone's piece that maybe they're about to take off and win the game, or maybe it's a stacks piece that's really bothering you. This land now becomes, a spell that you can cast to essentially take care of that. Just great. They did such a good job with those. Odawara and Boseiju being like the top 2 for show. After that, we have Polluted Delta, Scalding Tarn, Shifting Woodland. Like I said, just kind of alluding to that earlier. Shifting Woodland has Delirium instead of Threshold, and it says 2 and 2 green. Shifting Woodland becomes a copy of target permanent card in your graveyard until end of turn. Activate only if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. So you're looking for lands, sorcery, instant, creature, etc. Just those types of cards. What's really cool about this is if someone gets rid of one of your combo pieces or a piece of the deck that really is a bummer, you can use Shifting Woodland's ability if you have it online with Delirium and kind of utilize that to bring it back. Really cool card. I love it. Again, the flavor they did with the MH3 lands, very good. I like that. Any land where it has like a different utility like that, I think can find a spot in a commander deck pretty quickly. And then lastly, to finish it up, we have 1 snow-covered land of each of our land types. We've got a snow-covered forest, snow-covered island, snow-covered mountain. That was just a preference of mine to run snow-covered just because it's storm. Why not have a blizzard mountain or a blizzard plains? I'm sorry, a blizzard island or a blizzard forest. It just makes sense, right? I mean, she's going to control the weather, so she's got the blizzards. Let's look next into our tutors. So how are we going to find different things? Well, we've got some tutors and tutoring or digging type effects. And Brainstorm, it's an instant that says draw 3 cards, put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. It's an instant that does that. Horde of Calling, we do have creatures that can be comboed with, so we do want to have the ability to go and get those onto the battlefield. What better way than Court of Calling? Court of Calling is 3 green and X for an instant that has Convoke, so your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting a spell pays for 1 or 1 mana of that creature's color, which is super cool. You search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost X or less and put it on the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Not a creature heavy deck per se, but still a really good tutor, and the fact that it's instant speed is very helpful. After that, we have Eternal Witness. This is 1, 2 green. This is a creature. Whenever Eternal Witness enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Again, there's going to be times where you're going to get countered. Something's going to happen. Someone's going to mill you. You're going to gamble, and something's going to end up in the graveyard, and you're going to need Eternal Witness to basically come and get that out for you. And speaking of gamble, we're running Gamble. This is a sorcery. It's red. 1 red says search your library for a card. Put that card in your hand. Here's the caveat for gambling. Discard a card at random, then shuffle. This deck likes to abuse Gamble. When I was playtesting it, I found myself using Gamble quite a lot since I could search for specific cards, and it was okay. The deck can maintain itself enough if I were to gamble and lose and actually have to pitch one of the cards I had in my hand that I needed for a combo, or if it was in the yard, it was okay. So that's why I like Gamble. Even with the worst outcome, it seemed like to be able to fight through that pretty well and get the card back. After that, we have Green Sun Zenith. This is a sorcery. It says search your library for a green creature card with convert a mana cost X or less. It's 1 and a green. I'm sorry, green and X. And then you may put that card on the battlefield, then shuffle your library, shuffle Green Sun Zenith into its owner's library. So it keeps going back into the library. We have Mystical Tutor. This is a tutor that is 1 blue. Search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it, and then shuffle and put that card on top of it. So it goes to the top of the deck. That's why you'll see a common theme in this deck where we want to draw cards, different cards that say like draw. That's because I want basically to be able to tutor and then adversely be able to draw that card immediately and not have to wait a turn if I wanted to do the combo on that person's turn. If not, you just wait till the end of the person that goes before you's turn. That way on your turn, you're drawing the card you tutored for. After that, we have Noxious Revival. Speaking of that, this is a Phyrexian card. It has a little Phyrexian mana symbol, so you can either pay 2 life or the green that represents the little Phyrexian thing there. But you put target card from a graveyard on top of its owner library. Again, you want that recursion because people are going to try to counter your stuff all the time. We have Ponder, another digging piece. Ponder is 1 blue for a sorcery that says look at the top 3 cards of your library and then put them back in any order you may shuffle and then draw a card. A pretty good way to dig. Speaking of digging, we have Preordain. This is 1 blue for scry 2, then draw a card. Both Ponder and Preordain are sorceries. Here's a True Tutor in Solve the Equation for 2 and a blue. For sorcery, you get to search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. A good way to go get a piece that you might need. Along with that, we have Spellseeker. This is a creature, 2 and a blue, a human wizard. Whenever Spellseeker enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an instant or sorcery card with mana value 2 or less, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. We have 3 Visits. It's our only ramp card we have, but it's a good one because it goes and gets a forest, which I like. 1 and a green is a sorcery that says search your library for a forest card, put that card in the battlefield, then shuffle your library. A lot of dual lands, a lot of shock lands can all be searched with this. It just helps you kind of ramp into that quickly and get the ball rolling. Lastly, for our tutors and dig section, we have Worldly Tutor. Worldly Tutor is 1 green. Search your library for a creature card, put that on top, and then shuffle, shuffle, then put that card on top. So just like Mystical Tutor, this is a creature versus an instant or sorcery. Again, having the ability to tutor and dig for your pieces is massive because otherwise you're just kind of let everything being, done at fate speed, right? Like, am I just going to draw into it naturally? Without wasted tutor, it's very hard to get the pieces you might need to combo off. That being said, we do have what I like to call a good honest storm count. So these are just cheap pieces of the puzzle that will count towards storm. So storm count basically is basically twice. Basically says that when you play a spell, now you have played 1 spell. If you play another spell, and your storm count is 2. So it kind of something you want to keep track of on a turn where you've played 5 spells. That means your storm count is 5. You play that card that has storm or storm gives it storm. Now you have that spell, plus you have 5 copies of the spell before it because you've stormed, 5 times. So I call it the good old-fashioned storm count, good honest storm count, because these are usually 0s to play or they are 1. And so you can really kind of like spin those off, almost like cantrips, if you will. But the first one we have is Chrome Mox. This is also a mana rock, so a lot of these are going to have double purposes. They're going to be mana rocks in addition to us being storm counts. But late game, if you're just trying to storm off, what better way than just to drop a 0 drop because it's free. Chrome Mox is 0 with imprint. When Chrome Mox enters the battlefield, you may exile a non-artifact, non-land card from your hand, and then you can tap to add 1 mana of any of the exiled card's colors to your mana pool. Chrome Mox has recently seen a big jump in price, so again, it's a very expensive card. I get it. There's a lot of other cantrip style methods here. Not a ton of 0 drop mana abilities, but that's why they're so expensive. But again, I wanted to teeter on the edge of this being a competitive deck, is why I went that route. After that, we have Everflowing Chalice, which is also 0. It has a multi-kicker of 2. It says it enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it for each time it was kicked. So each time you pay 2 mana, it gets a charge counter, and then you can tap to add colorless mana for each charge counter on Everflowing Chalice. So if you pay 4 into that kicker, you get 2 counters. You can tap it to add 2 mana. Again, late game, you want some storm count, it's another 0 drop. Or early game, it's a mana rock. Lotus Petal, 0 drop artifact. It says tap, sacrifice Lotus Petal to add 1 mana of any color. It's good for quickly getting storm out. It's good for just having a mana rock on the field that you can use at an opportune time, and it's good for storm count. Mishra's Bauble, a good utility card for 0. It's another artifact. Tap to sacrifice Mishra's Bauble. Look at the top card of target player's library. Draw a card at the beginning of the next end step. So it's draw as well, so you can wait until the end of someone else's turn and draw that tutor. again, that card you tutored for, just utility and storm count is what we're looking for. Mox Amber, another good one. For 0, you can tap to add 1 mana of any color among legendary creatures and planeswalkers you control. So this one sometimes can be a dud if you don't have your commander out or a legendary creature planeswalker, but still, you know, again, it sees more good than it doesn't. You can hold it in your hand for that storm count and that mana advantage later in the game. Mox Opal, another one that just saw a recent uptick in price. Mox Opal is another 0-drop with Metalcraft. Metalcraft is an ability that always wants to see 3. I think it's always 3. Control 3 or more artifacts, but this one specifically says tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Activate this ability only if you control 3 or more artifacts, which is pretty easily done with the amount of 0-drops we have and mana rocks. Following Mox Opal, we have Ornithopter. Ornithopter is just a 0-drop creature with flying and a 0/2. It's a body, and it's a late game storm count. That's why it made it into the deck. Another fringe card that's probably on the list that I could cut for something else, but I like the idea of Ornithopter being in there for a 0/0/2 because we don't run a ton of creatures, so I don't want to get blasted in the face by the fact that we have no blockers out that can fly, and Ornithopter's a free one that can be a storm count piece later in the game. Paradise Mantle, another 0-drop there for more or less the storm count, but it also has a quick creature can tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, equip 1. Pretty cool way to go ahead and get started if you get one of your mana dorks out, but you need something other than green. Paradise Mantle can do that quickly or late game. You guessed it, it's a storm count piece. Tormod's Crypt, great utility piece, should see more play than it does, I think, especially in the competitive atmosphere because it shuts graveyard players off. But for 0, you tap it. It's an artifact that you can tap to sacrifice Tormod's Crypt to exile all cards from target player's graveyard. So a really cool way to stop graveyard abuse. And then lastly, we have Urza's Bauble, which is very similar to Mishra's Bauble. It says tap, sacrifice Urza's Bauble to choose a card at random from target player's hand. Look at that card. Ignore that ability if that player has no cards left in the hand. I love the old Ice Age text of that. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So very similar to Mishra's Bauble. Instead of top of library, it's a random card in hand, but again, another 0-drop with some utility and the ability to draw a card, plus it adds Storm. Say it with me. I love it. So if we're looking at Storm, why do we want Storm? Well, we want Storm because we have pieces that can be utilized by it that have built-in. So let's look at our built-in Storm payoffs. We have 8 of them. What I mean is built-in, that means just the card has Storm itself. Storm, our commander, is not going to give this Storm. So the first card we talk about is Brain Freeze. Brain Freeze is 1 in a blue. Target player mills 3 cards and has Storm. So you can mill someone out completely with this. This is why we're going to talk about our combo pieces in a minute that give us infinite storm count. But Brain Freeze is one piece that, you know, it's just once you have it and you know you have access to infinite storm, you've won the game right there because you're going to be able to mill everybody out. They're not going to be able to draw any more cards, therefore they lose the game. After that, we have Chatterstorm. So this is a cool way, and plus it's the name Storm's in it. For 1 and a green, you create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token with Storm. What cooler way to beat everybody is if you have infinite squirrels on the field. We'll take a turn because they won't have haste, but still, infinite squirrels, next turn, it's going down. I'm swinging infinite squirrels at you. Yeah, here it comes. Empty the Warrens, very similar to Chatterstorm. Empty the Warrens is 3 in a red to put 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens into the battlefield, and then it also has Storm. So you're just gonna, you know, what the second best way instead of squirrels? Goblins. There, I said it. After that, we have Grape Shot, and then if you don't want to deal damage with combat, just do it directly, right? Grape Shot is 1 in a red sorcery. It says it deals 1 damage to any target with Storm. So infinite Storm, you have infinite damage. Ignite Memories is kind of the same way. I like this card. I really didn't know about this card until I was looking into like built-in Storm stuff, but Ignite Memories, as long as your opponents have something in their hand that has mana value, essentially is infinite damage. It says target player reveals a card at random from his or her hand. Ignite Memories deals damage to that player equal to that card's converted mana cost, and then it has Storm. So I mean, as long as they have something in there that has a mana cost, they're going to be infinitely hurt. If they just have a bunch of lands in their hand, then they've lucked out and they're not going to lose. After that, we have Spreading Insurrection. I love this card because, you know, it's just a cool way of going about Storm. For 4 in a red, you gain control of target creature you don't control until end of turn. Untap that creature, it gains haste until end of turn, and it has Storm. So let's just take the whole board. Maybe someone has 1,000 creatures out already. Let's just take the entire board and use it against you and kill everybody with Spreading Insurrection. Temporal Fisher for 4 and a blue. You can basically just send everything back to everybody's hand. It's just a Cyclonic Rift. Return target permanent to its owner's hand, Storm. Cool thing about this one is you can also bounce lands, so basically you can just clear out the entire board with a little storm count. And then the last one we have is probably the meanest one, just because it targets something that's near and dear to everyone's heart. But hey, this is Storm. She doesn't care. She's letting volcanoes run rampant upon your precious little lands. Volcanic Awakening is 4 and 2 red for a sorcery that says destroy target land, but it has Storm. So why not destroy everybody's lands? Then you have all the lands, all the power, all the Storm, and you're going to kill everybody with it. Let's go. Now let's talk about the combo pieces. This is like how we go about getting the combo in place for infinite storm count, right? We have a very easy one that everyone is probably very familiar with. This is Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal. Isochron Scepter is a artifact that costs 2. It has an ability called Imprint, and when Isochron Scepter enters the battlefield, you may exile an instant card with mana value 2 or less from your hand. Then for 2 mana, you may tap Isochron Scepter. You may copy the exile card. If you do, you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. What you do is you use that with Dramatic Reversal, and as long as you have non-land permanents like mana rocks, mana dorks, that essentially can produce 2 mana or more, you can now infinitely cast Dramatic Reversal because it's going to untap all non-land permanents you control. So firstly, you play Isochron Scepter, you imprint Dramatic Reversal onto it, you have the 2 open, you go ahead and tap the Isochron Scepter to play the Dramatic Reversal. It untaps itself because it is a non-land permanent, the Scepter, and then the Soul Ring or the 2 mana dorks or the rocks you have will untap as well. You pay the 2 mana, you do it again. You do it over and over and over and over and over again until you pick a number that you're good with, and now you have storm count of 999,999,999, and you get to storm off and kill everybody with a cool storm piece. That's a really cool way of doing it. It's a very popular, it's a 2-card combo, assuming you have the ability to have mana untapped. So very popular, not terribly expensive. Isochron Scepters are anywhere from 10 to 15, 20 bucks. So you can get one, you can get this combo for pretty cheap. If you haven't seen it yet, played against you, you will. If you ever play a combo deck, it's a very common combo to see. After that, we have a couple 3-card combos, which I think are pretty fun. The next combo we want to talk about is one that involves 2 creatures and an instant. So what needs to happen for this is you need to have on your battlefield Stormkiln Artist, which is 3 in a red. He's a creature, dwarf shaman. He says he gets +1. He gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. Then he has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a treasure token. After that, you would need a card called Skullwinder. Skullwinder is on the field as well in this scenario. This is a creature that is 2 and a green with Death Touch. Whenever Skullwinder enters the battlefield, return target card from your graveyard to your hand. Then you choose an opponent. That player returns a card from their graveyard to their hand. After that, we have a card that will combo off with it called Essence Flux. This is 1 blue mana for an instant. It says exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it's a spirit, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So what happens is you target your Skullwinder with the Essence Flux. Skullwinder goes into exile, comes back, and then once it comes back, you target the Essence Flux that is now in the graveyard. You have then created a treasure token because of the Magecraft ability of Stormkiln Artist. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a treasure token. You use that treasure to cast Essence Flux again. You target your Skullwinder. You go get your Essence Flux. You do this over and over and over again, and now you have Infinite Storm. The only problem with this one is you want to make sure you also have enough mana to cast one of your storm pieces, right? So you don't want to do this if you are only able to basically loop it with no other mana involved. But again, most of our storm cards, they range anywhere from 2 mana to 5. So it's not the hardest thing in the world, especially most of the 2 mana ones are the ones you want to actually end the game immediately. The more expensive ones, oddly enough, are the ones that don't do direct damage or mill everybody out, things of that nature. And then lastly, we have another combo piece that we have the ability to use with Isochron Scepter as well. And this involves using Isochron Scepter to imprint a card called Vitalize. So same concept, we're going to play Isochron Scepter. We're going to imprint Vitalize this time instead of Dramatic Reversal. And Vitalize says untap all creatures you control. But what has to happen then is we play a card that I've added in here just because I love the flavor of it. It's just funny. It's a cool card. I've always wanted to play it in a way that is meaningful when I saw that it was a combo piece. I was like, let's go. It's a Karn's Touch, and Karn is a popular figure from the Magic lore. He's awesome. If you love artifacts, you love Karn. But it's 2 blue for an instant that says target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature with power and toughness, each equal to its converted mana cost until end of turn. So what happens is now we've turned our Isochron Scepter into a creature. However, we are now able to use the Vitalize that we have imprinted on Isochron Scepter, and we're able to say, hey, we've got 2 mana, just like we need for Dramatic Reversal. We've got access to 2 mana through our mana dorks. So we're able to tap, untap, and since it's a creature, it's going to untap and tap itself, or untap itself anytime we do that, therefore creating another loop where we have unlimited storm count. Another cool thing I want to mention before we move off the combo pieces portion here, if you have storm count artist out and you've used your infinite storm count on something and necessarily not won the game, let's say you went and made, all those squirrels, that will also make infinite treasures for you to use because of his Metalcraft ability, saying that he's copying whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a treasure token. So it's really cool. He's very, very useful in a lot of spell slinging decks that abuse stuff like that. But how do we protect all this? What are the control pieces we're using? We're not using a ton of control, only 10 pieces that I deem like true control. An offer you can't refuse for 1. It's an instant that says counter target non-creature spells. Controller creates 2 treasure tokens. Beast Within, to remove something. You destroy target permanent, so whether it's a land, it's a enchantment, an artifact, something that's really bothering you. I added Beast Within for that. So Cyclonic Rift, I ran that in here, so you could essentially run Cyclonic Rift to remove a singular piece that might be bothering you at instant speed, because it's just 1 in a blue. Return target non-land permanent you don't control to its owner's hand, or you can overload it to remove all pieces you don't control. What that would do then is basically allow your play state to then just go off, or everybody else is going to have to rebuild everything that they have as well. Deflecting Swat, since we're in red, why not run Deflecting Swat? Keeps things away from you. If you control your commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost, which is great, and you may choose new targets for target spell or ability. Fierce Guardianship from the same card set as Deflecting Swat, from the same commander set, I should say. If you control your commander for this one, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost, but instead you counter target non-creature spell. It's great. Flusterstorm, had to add it. It's got Storm. For 1 blue, counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1, and it has Storm, like I said, so a bunch of copies can come out, and then they can't pay the 1 because there's so many copies, going crazy. Force of Negation, another free counter. If it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Counter target non-creature spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. Along the same lines, we have Force of Will. You can pay 1 life and exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost to counter target spell. So this one is non-restrictive to creature spell, non-creature, whatever. It's just a spell in general. We have Swan Song, another cheap one for blue, counter target enchantment, instant, or sorcery spell. Its controller puts a 2/2 bluebird creature token with flying onto the battlefield. And then since we're in green, let's add a little protection with Veil of Summer. This card I think is really cool just because it really protects your stuff. Veil of Summer is 1 green. For instance, says draw a card. Opponent has cast a blue or black spell this turn, so they're trying to bounce something, counter something, kill something with the black aspect of it. Spells you control can't be countered this turn. You and permanents you control gain hexproof from blue and for black until end of turn. Great card. So that's how we protect everything. So now, Shane, you said this was not a CDH, that you're not just going combos. You wanted to use the commander. I've yet to see you use the commander. Well, this is how we're going to use the commander, all right? We're going to have Storm out, and then we're going to have spells that we want to cast with Storm's ability to really abuse the Ceaseless Tempest, all right? And so those are, we've got 7 of those spells. The first of which is Bolt Wave. So imagine this card, all these cards that we're going to talk about has Storm, just like we spoke about earlier. First one is Bolt Wave. Bolt Wave deals 3 damage to each opponent. You stormed off 500 times. That's amazing 1,500 damage that you're able to now give everybody. And it's just 1 red. Love it. Capture of Jing Zhao. This is an extra turn spell. I know I went the basic route. I had to put the extra turns in here. I wasn't going to do it, and I said, darn it, it's just too much fun to storm off and take a bunch of extra turns at once. So my caveman brain made me do it. So blame my caveman brain. But yes, for 3 and 2 blue, take an extra turn off this one. If you've got storm count, let's say you don't even have infinite storm count. You've stormed off 4 times. You pay 5 mana to take 4 extra turns, 5 extra turns. Holy moly. The next one's a game-winning card, Lightning Bolt, iconic card in Magic, but the same concept. If you have enough storm count count behind it and you've attacked with Storm, this card comes into play after that combat. It's the next one you play, so it has infinite, or it has whatever Storm is. Lightning Bolt deals 3 damage to any target. Again, for 1 red, you can deal a massive amount of damage and wipe the whole board out. This one I added in just because it's hilarious. What a funny way to win the game. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. For 1 and 2 blue, each opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until that player has exiled cards with total mana value 20 or more. I just love this card. I think it's so flavorful and fun, and it's just fun to see people like kind of exile stuff and like having to do the math and see like what's what. But yeah, if you do this card enough times, like the Storm count of like 10, even if you can't like go infinite with a combo piece and you just got a bunch of like Storm cantrips or Storm like 0 drops, like it's gonna do a lot of damage. It's gonna cripple everybody at the very least. Their decks are gonna be super thin. After that, we have another extra turn with Temporal Manipulation. This is the same concept as Capture. It's 3 and 2 blue to take an extra turn, and following that, we went redundant. We went Time Warp. 3 and 2 blue takes an extra turn, and then lastly, to win the game with damage, we ran. I ran this card because I like the fact that it can't be countered. Urza's Rage for 2 and a red. I guess a little more expensive. It does also have Kicker, and Kicker will be attached to your Storm count. So if you pay the Kicker cost, all the Storm copies also have the Kicker cost paid toward them. But for 2 in red, it has Kicker 9, 8 in red, which I know is very expensive, but it says the reason I run it is just because of this. This spell can't be countered, so they can't stop it. If they're waiting on that last piece to counter that spell, they knew Storm was coming. This is kind of the shocker where it's like, man, I can't counter it. But it deals 3 damage to any target. And that's just like Lightning Bolt, just like Bolt Wave. That's how you're going to win the game. And then if you kicked it, if you didn't have enough Storm to win with 3 damage, if you had enough mana to do both with the kick as well, instead it deals 10 damage. So, you know, if you kicked it 4 times with the kicker cost, you won the game that way anyway. So those are the things we want to give Storm with Storm's ability. So that's kind of where I split it, right? We want to use things that are infinite with built-in Storm. We want to use things that we can give Storm to with Storm's ability by attacking to give it the Ceaseless Tempest. Those are the payoffs that we want to see. And then I talked about it earlier. Let's just talk about the last thing is just our mana dorks. So these are some of the pieces you want involved on the board at a certain time, just so you can use them with either Isochron Scepter or some other pieces that might need it, like a Vitalize. So our mana dorks are Birds of Paradise, 1 green. It has flying to tap to add mana of any one color. Delighted Halfling, just a great add for any deck that where the commander matters, just because it says tap, add 1 mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast a legendary spell, which will be your commander, and that spell can't be countered. So a really safe way of bringing your commander in. Elvish Mystic, tap to add a green mana. Land of War Elves, another mana dork, tap to add green mana. And then Ornithopter of Paradise, another almost like cantrip piece. This was another fringe card, but I did end up keeping it just because I needed more quote-unquote mana rocks or mana dorks for the combo lines. The Ornithopter of Paradise, 2 generic mana for a flyer that you can tap to add 1 mana of any color. And then lastly, the things that go like that are just the 3 mana rocks. These are just rocks in general. These are also cheap enough to probably be considered a Storm count, but since they weren't 0 drops, I put them in their own category of mana rocks, and that's Arcane Signet. 2 drop for an artifact that says tap, add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Felwar Stone, another 2 drop to add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls can produce. And then obviously the classic Soul Ring, 1 drop to tap to add 2 mana. We also have utility and draw and protection spells. I call these my utility cards. There's 5 of them. So these cards are utility because they are Storm count. They either do something to let us go online as fast as we want with haste, or they're a little bit of protection as well. And that's Crimson Wisps is one of them. Crimson Wisps is 1 red. It's an instant that says target creature becomes red and gains haste until end of turn, and you draw a card after that. So just a draw spell to draw that tutor that you might need to win the game on your turn, and a Storm count because it's only 1 red to play it. Enter the Enigma is great for Storm herself because it is 1 blue. Target creature can't be blocked this turn, so you have to deal combat damage for the Ceaseless Tempest mechanic, and you get to draw a card, another really good utility card. Expedite is 1 red, target creature gains haste till the turn, draw a card. Gitaxian Probe is a Phyrexian mana for blue, so you can either pay 2 life or a blue mana. Take a peek at a target player's hand so you can kind of see what's going on there, and then draw a card. So maybe you know someone might have some open blue mana late game. You know, look at their hand. Now you know whether you can go fully shields down because nothing's coming, or you might keep a counter spell handy because they have a counter spell as well. And then lastly, Lightning Greaves. It's just a 2-drop, and then equip 0. Equip creature has haste and so all these are cheap enough to where they can really apply to the storm count logic for Storm's built-in ability, or they have protection pieces, draw pieces, or they can give us haste when we might need that immediately. Because if Storm's out, we know we can win on that turn. Let's go ahead and give her haste so we can do the damage and get the Storm rolling. But let me know your thoughts. This was, very much outside of my normal build comfort zone. Again, I was just too conflicted to run one way or the other, where it was just abuse her ability or have built-in Storm, so I kind of meshed it together. So maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, maybe my combos are stupid and I should have other combos, but I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your feedback, so leave it all. We love listening or looking at it all, reading all the comments. Again, thank you so much. Please check us out on Patreon. Check us our Discord out. We've been doing daily discussions on Discord. It's been great. Come give your feedback and opinions on that. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Here's to 2025. Really looking forward to it, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks again. It's been The Breakdown. Bye.